Good evening, Bahamas. Coming up tonight.
The opposition leader speaks out about the resignation of Leonard Sands.
The Wanaloothra Foundation fires back at Disney's most recent plans for Lighthouse Point.
Our News is brought to you by Alive.
Welcome to Our News and thanks for joining us. I'm Kyle Joaquin. A Bahamas Maritime Authority report on the deadly Exuma boat explosion will be turned over to the Attorney General's office, according to Transport Minister Renwood Wells, who reacted to the report's damning findings today. He told reporters the report has also been sent to the U.S. government and the victims of that explosion. Jared Higgs reports.
There is concern, and where we're slack, we can tighten up. We're going to tighten up.
In the wake of a damning report on the deadly boat explosion in Exuma, Transport Minister Renwood Wells has ordered that every boat in Exuma be inspected. On Monday, a Bahamas Maritime Authority report revealed that the Four Seas Adventures boat involved in that deadly explosion was homemade and wasn't registered with the Port Department.
Yesterday, I moved to issue certain instructions to the Port Department to have every ship, every boat in Exuma, every ship owner to come in and for us to inspect their vessels so that we're able to bring the requisite regulations to this industry, and not just in Exuma, throughout the country.
Wells has also asked what the consequences would be for whoever issued Four Seas their license. He says he's going to have to pass that matter on to one of his cabinet colleagues.
It's going to be turned over to the AG's office, and so the Attorney General is really going to have to weigh in. Obviously, when the report was released, it was also given to both the victims and to the United States government, who has this report, and so we'll be waiting, I guess, to hear what comes of it in that regard, and the Bahamas government will then have to respond.
The June 30th boat explosion claimed the life of 39-year-old Georgia resident Malika Jackson. A 22-year-old Vermont woman, Stephanie Schaefer, lost both of her legs. While the report was unable to determine the cause of the explosion, it did find that the fuel hose used on the Four Seas boat in question was not designed or recommended for use with any alcohol or gasoline blends or liquids. Additionally, the report states that the vessel was not built up to any recognized standard. Wells says as an engineer, he's disappointed by the findings.
Because in engineering, before you can actually live in a building, ride a vehicle, the design has to be done on paper. That design has to be approved on paper by either an electrical engineer, a mechanical engineer, a structural engineer, a civil engineer, an aeronautical engineer for airplanes, or a naval architect in the case of boats. Should have inspected, been able to look at those drawings and say, this is a boat that we feel is safe. Okay, that is not done in the Bahamas.
Wells says with boat building being a common practice in the Bahamas, it's time to clamp down.
As a part of the Port Department, what I'm going to be doing is that before those boats are actually built, that we do have a naval architect who's going to look at those designs to ascertain that those designs are actually safe before we let persons construct them, especially for commercial purposes.
The report recommended that the owner of Four Seas Adventures obtain valid boat registration certificates for any vessel intended for use on a commercial basis. It also recommended that Four Seas comply and the Port Authority enforce the Commercial Recreational Watercraft Act. Reporting for Our News, I am Jared Higgs.
All right, thanks, Jared. Well, a leaked Public Hospitals Authority memo reveals severe deficiencies with the dialysis unit at Princess Margaret Hospital. The memo, penned by Hospital Administrator Mary Lightborn Walker, notes that patients are only receiving care for a fraction of the time that they should, and that a shortage of nurses is only creating frustration among staff. A leaky ceiling, flooding, and a malfunctioning air conditioning system are said to only compound the issues at hand. Health Minister Dr. Dwayne Sands acknowledged the issues and says it all comes down to a shortage of funding in the healthcare sector.
Part of this relates to the fact that we spend an inordinate amount of money in health, and our revenue base is very, very low. And so, as I've said to you many, many times, we have to increase the revenue base. If we are going to deal with these very vexing problems of crime, non-communicable diseases, heart disease, kidney failure, diabetes, and stroke, then we have to have the revenue base.
A lack of dialysis equipment also means that the PHA has to outsource care to private providers. With 87% of patients in the public sector paying nothing, SANS reiterated his call for increased fees.
We are going line by line with each of the fees to determine whether it is in conflict with any existing policy or law. And so we fully intend to modify the fee schedule at Princess Margaret Hospital, the Rand Memorial Hospital, Sandlands Rehabilitation Center, and EMS. The problem, however, is that we recognize that we don't have the capacity to bill and to collect.
As for the challenges in collecting payments, SANS says they are trying to fix that as well. Meanwhile, opposition leader Philip Davis slammed the government for playing the blame game when it comes to the state of the health care in the country.
The doctors are not being heartless and callous, as some would have us to believe, but have been forced to bring matters to a boiling point because of the sheer arrogance of the part-time Minister of Health, Dr. Dwayne Sands, and the government. The strike is intended to draw attention to serious and critical conditions that exist in our nation's largest hospital and at the RAN in Freeport, which I heard of personally over the weekend.
Davis says the PHA seems to be powerless and in need of a serious overhaul. Though the government claims to be cash-strapped, Davis said it simply needs to manage money better.
Why would you spend your money to buy the hotel as a middleman to sell it, just to sell it the next day or the next couple of months to, at a no doubt, a much lower price than what you're buying it for? So it's a question of your decision making. You could have taken at least $10 million of that and meet some of the needs of the PHA.
Nearly 1 week after top Disney executives revealed that they were under contract to purchase Lighthouse Point, a top executive of the Warner Luther Foundation says the fight is not over for the coveted piece of land. CEO of the foundation, Sean Ingram, says despite the rosy picture Disney is trying to paint, the foundation still believes the proposed project is bad for Eleuthera. Jasmine Brown reports.
Ingram fired back at those Disney executives as he insisted it's simply not the dream they're trying to sell to the Bahamian people.
It's not the fairy tale that's been painted.
The Warner Luther Foundation has spent the last few months lobbying the government for approval to develop a national park at Lighthouse Point. Along the way, they have garnered the support of environmental groups like Re-Earth and the Bahamas National Trust. The Warner Luther Foundation has presented a plan to the government to purchase the property and preserve it for Bahamians, as well as provide more than 1,000 jobs. They have also started the Save Lighthouse Point petition online and collected donations with the view of purchasing the property from the private owner.
Places like Lighthouse shouldn't even be up for discussion when it comes to that size development.
But Disney has other proposed plans for the site that include developing a cruise port. Last Wednesday, Disney Cruise Line President Jeff Foley told our news team that Disney is prepared to make an investment between $350 and $400 million on the project that they say will employ 150 Bahamians. Foley also said Disney Cruise Line would preserve the salt ponds on the property, give the government 170 acres of the land for conservation, and allow Bahamians to access the property. Disney already has an agreement for the land with the current owner. Foley also insisted that all Disney is waiting on is approval or denial from the Bahamas Investment Authority. Ingram says despite the desperation for jobs on that island, the foundation believes the project is not the right one for Eleuthera.
There's no comparison between, I don't even want to think about their own because it's just night and day what we're offering.
Despite Disney's interest, Ingram adds that the foundation is still hoping to get a shot to purchase the property, as he contended that no one knows what's best for Eleuthera better than those who live there.
We don't just cruise there, we live there.
Reporting for our news, I'm Jasmine Brown.
Opposition leader Philip Davis said the Minutes administration must come clean about the recent resignations of former Bahamas Power and Light Chairman Donald Osborne and former Contractors Association President Leonard Sands. Davis said the way the two were allegedly treated sends the wrong message to Bahamians. With more on this, here's Jillian Gray.
Following the resignation of Darnell Osborne and Leonard Sands from the FNM, opposition leader Philip Davis says it seems that the Minutes administration is silencing all voices that are opposing theirs.
These two resignations also signals what is a clear road upon which the government has been embarked on from they were elected. And that is to silence voices of opposition, either through persecution or prosecution. I asked them to come clean on these resignations, because each of them have in it, each resignation comes on the heels of what each resignee says are political interference.
Sands quit the FNM this week, citing mounting pressure from those in political leadership who did not want him as president of the Bahamian Contractors Association. The former FNM candidate said he and members of his board were given the distinct impression that if he continued on in that role, there would be consequences for other BCA members. Meanwhile, Darnell Osborne, a member of the FNM's Finance Committee and former BPL chair, left the governing party after she and Works Minister Desmond Bannister had a heated public feud over the decision to replace the entire BPL board.
This is not the way to empower young Bahamians. The government is clearly sending the wrong message to the Bahamian people, especially the professional class.
When asked if the PLP would welcome the pair should they decide to switch sides, Davis said this.
We are a big tent. Politics is about numbers. We welcome persons who will join our organization.
Davis also echoed concerns raised by Leonard Sands over the decision to appoint Omar Archer as contractors registrar. Sands said Archer lacks the necessary experience to hold that post. Davis said he also was surprised by this appointment.
And it's rather curious that you'll appoint a registrar without first appointing the board to govern the industry.
Reporting for our News, I'm Jillian Gray.
From Grand Bahama, 2 armed robbers are in Rand Memorial Hospital tonight under heavy police guard after a family they allegedly attempted to rob fought them off and blocked their escape. According to police reports, 2 males broke into a home on Waterfall Drive in Seahorse Village around 1 a.m. with a firearm and a knife. The robbers allegedly demanded cash and other items from the residents of the home who resisted. A fight ensued and the robbers were reportedly stabbed multiple times. The 2 men then tried to escape in a vehicle, but their would-be victims blocked them and the vehicle was extensively damaged. Police were called to the scene where they recovered a black imitation pistol, a knife, and a vehicle. Still to come on our news, a look at the PLP's plans for its convention next month. Plus, a little later, I challenge myself in the kitchen. Stay tuned.